I got a grand jury started against
Calling
MetLife.
today a hectic day would be an understatement, and I've got my good friend Larry Klayman with me to give us his expert legal insight as to exactly what the hell is going on. Larry, this is some unprecedented stuff we're seeing in terms of Sessions is out, Ruth Ginsburg is injured. The Democrats are, going wild trying to overturn elections. Larry, what's going on? Can you bring some clarity and some sanity
and let's
to us?
talk about Tucker Carlson, whose house was
Right.
attacked last night by the left. Who knows the reason behind the massacre in Thousand Oaks, California?
Right.
That's going on. And as far as Sessions is concerned, this is long overdue, but I admire the president for not waiting 24 hours after the election to fire the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, finally. But the sad part is, Jason, is that he's been dragged along. We've talked about that, to the guillotine. And even though Sessions is not there anymore, in many ways it's too late to reverse the tide. And we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 weeks a report by Mueller, Special Counsel Mueller, which is going to be the equivalent of an impeachment report like Ken Starr prepared with regard to Clinton, but worse. And that's going to be the trigger for a Democrat-controlled House to start impeachment proceedings. And then, of course, they get to have impeachment managers, and they get to do investigation, and then they have committees that are being controlled by lunatics, Government Reform and Oversight Committee in the House and the House Judiciary Committee. So it's going to be just melee. It's going to be out of control, and it's going to drive this president to a halt. And then, of course, he's going to go over to the Senate and be tried there. And who's going to sit on top of that but a rhino Republican Chief Justice by the name of John Roberts, who gave us Obamacare, who's not going to really, wield a tough gavel on that. And the president won't be convicted, but the country will suffer for the next 2 years. Now, it may get the president reelected, but nothing's going to happen legislatively for the next 2 years, and he's going to be preoccupied as we have to fight North Korea, Iran, God knows where. I mean, those talks have broken down. We're probably going to have other wars. So this is a very serious matter, and we're going to do our best at Freedom Watch, and we had a show the other night to knock Mueller out on illegal leaks. Our citizens' grand juries are going to have him indicted. We're going to try him. We're going to convict him. We'll have him sentenced, and we'll seek to have those sentences legally and peacefully enforced and get him out of there. But, I'm afraid that the president, whose lawyers have basically done nothing other than to go on Fox News, have created a situation here which is now rolling downhill to the detriment not just to the president but to the entire country. And that's the sad part. And then Rudy Giuliani, he's a nice guy, but he's wrapped up in a divorce proceeding in New York right now. His ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, claims he spent $900,000 on a mistress.
Oh.
How can someone be effective when they're going through a divorce like that? So this is where we are right now. He needs new lawyers there, too, not just Sessions.
How many times has Giuliani been married? I feel like the guy's always going through a divorce. I mean, that's not really important.
Well,
but
I think he's 3 short of Larry King. Okay, so he's at least in the ballpark. But he's a nice man. I mean, I know Giuliani, but he's just not effective. And Sekulow is out of his league. Jay Sekulow. He's also very nice. I like Jay, but he's not a criminal defense lawyer. And here we are. We're on the verge of impeachment. It's going to happen. And we need to fight back. The American people need to fight back. And putting in an acting attorney general, Matthew Whitaker, is not going to stop it because it's now out of the hands of the Justice Department. It's gone too far. And this is what we're in store for.
Wow. It really is unprecedented times we're in here, Larry. I mean, you've been saying it for months that we've been speaking that the president is getting bad advice and that he should remove Sessions. A lot of people are feeling that the firing of Sessions immediately after the election is some kind of indicator that the president is hiding something or that he's done something wrong. I know you disagree. Can you give us a little bit of insight as to why this was done?
I think it's the opposite. If he was defensive, he wouldn't have done it. He's basically saying, it's a little bit like King Kong pounding his chest. He's saying, I'm in charge here. And you know what? I took some advice and I waited until after the election. But now I'm going to do what I have to do. And he's doing it as well, Jason, because he knows he's going to be impeached. What does he have to lose at this point?
Right.
You know, they lost the House. And the reason they lost the House is because you had a Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, who was backstabbing the president for the last 2 years, two-faced, ineffective. I mean, all they got through was tax reform. They couldn't reform Obamacare. They couldn't, you know, build a border wall. Basically, they were thrown out on their rear ends, the Republicans. And frankly, they deserved it. But what did we get? We got Nancy Pelosi, who's completely insane, an ultra-leftist. We've got Gerald Nadler now, who's going to run the Government Oversight and Reform Committee. You know, and maybe he's lost a little weight lately, but he's still not a heavyweight, I might add. Right. You know, in the brains department. And then we have Adam Schiff, you know, from West Hollywood, the West Hollywood congressman, who's going to be chairing up the Intelligence Committee in the House.
That's a
so
joke.
It's going to be an inquisition. You know, I wrote an article in Newsmax. It's on the Larry Klayman blog, Klayman's Court, named after Coach K. I went to Duke, Klayman's Court. And, you know, what I said was, it's a little bit like Louis XV in France. Après moi le déluge. Okay, after me the flood. Okay, because what's happened up to this point with this bad advice that the president has gotten, and with the way he was sold out by Republicans in the House, such that they've been thrown out on the rear end, he's in real trouble. And I don't think he knows it yet. But he might as well have replaced an attorney general because he's got nothing to lose at this point. Right. He's going to be impeached.
I mean, the sad thing is, Larry, we're all in trouble because, as you said, what this is going to do is it's just going to slow any progress. It's going to grind the government to a halt. I mean, what we're really seeing here is what happens when an outsider exceeds all odds and actually is elected president. You know, we've this resist and everything. It's not letting up at all. It's intensifying, if anything.
Oh, yeah, they smell blood. It's like a shark circling its prey. They smell blood. And they're not going to knock the president out. He's too strong for that. But he's going to be ground to a halt in terms of his doing the affairs of state. And the country will suffer as a result of that. And there'll be a constant pounding. And look at these leftists that almost won races. Of course, you know, it's not over yet in Florida because of election fraud, I believe, in Broward and Palm Beach counties. That's my home state. I know what went on. I participated in the 2000 Gore v. Bush case with the hanging chads and everything else. Yes. And it's Broward and Palm Beach County are highly corrupt. They're highly leftist counties. They're Democrat counties. Broward, you know, is Debbie Wasserman Schultz is the congressman. That tells you everything, you know. And Palm Beach is not much better. And, you know, we're at risk now in Florida and everywhere else with these leftists that want to take control. You know, and Bernie Sanders comes out today and says, oh, the reason that Andrew Gillum didn't win as governor in Florida, of course he may as a result of fraud now. It's ongoing, and Freedom Watch is going to intervene in that and monitor it and make sure that doesn't change the result because we want the people to have voted for the right person. But Bernie says, oh, the reason these people lost is because white people don't want to vote for blacks anymore. You know what? No, they don't want to vote for Andrew Gillum. They don't want to vote for Stacey Abrams in Georgia. They're tired of this reverse racism. They're tired of being told that they're racists. Right. And you can't blame them for pushing back against these racially divisive candidates who play the race card every step of the way. I'm sick of it. And, you know, very few people will talk back at this. This is why I don't go on Fox News, because I'll say this. You know, frankly, there's nothing wrong in being white, and we deserve to be treated the same as blacks and everybody else in this country. And that's why these people lost. But now they're cooking the election, because on the horizon are not only people like Gillum, but Beto O'Rourke, who's white in Texas, these ultra so-called progressives, I call them regressives. They're borderline communists. So tear the president down, destroy him, and then put in these people who basically lost by a hair. This is what we have on the horizon today. And it's frightening because in 4 years, we could, excuse me, in 2 years, we could wind up with someone who is far worse than Obama. And, you know, someone who is not just borderline socialist, but is actually communist. So this is where we're headed.
You know, it's crazy, Larry. We've got this, what's her name, Rosario Cortez, you know, that the youngest woman in Congress ever. How did she get elected? That seems ridiculous. Obviously propped up by Soros, and she doesn't seem to be very educated, certainly not very experienced. She's made so many dumb gaffes. I mean, that's not somebody that we really need in Congress. And plus, she's running as a democratic socialist. Now, just a few weeks ago, I was in Sweden, and people who were born and raised in Sweden, which is not generally a country you think that people are trying to escape from, they've said democratic socialism has destroyed their country, and they're leaving.
Well, that has destroyed their country, and letting in uncontrolled immigration from Muslim countries has destroyed their country. And the Swedes always thought that they were so open-minded, you know, so just. Now they found out what it's actually like to live with that kind of a Muslim population, okay, because the cultural differences are more than night and day, and they don't coexist well together. And I don't mean that in a racial way or in a bigoted way, but the reality is that Muslims think differently than we do, and they have a different religion, you know, and they don't respect the rights of women, and they don't respect, you know, the Judeo-Christian concepts. They just don't. So it's not working there. And this is a very serious question. And look, you've got Laura Loomer on the stage, our friend and fearless person up there in Minnesota right now, and they're cooking the results for Muslims up there too. You know, so I mean, we're being surrounded, and you know, they're good Muslims. I don't mean to say that all Muslims are bad people, but culturally, I'm sorry, they just don't fit in. They don't, and that's why they live in ghettos, and they live in ghettos in Sweden, and that's the problem. And they're subsidized, and they don't want to come out. They don't want to assimilate. They don't want to be part of the rest of the country, generally speaking.
I think
and that's what we're up against. All this is destroying the fabric of the United States, and I'm pro-immigration.
Right.
My family came from the Ukraine. They came from Poland. They came from Lithuania. I'm not a xenophobe. I'm an international lawyer. I used to represent mostly foreign companies in international trade proceedings. That's why I started Judicial Watch. I saw they were being treated unfairly. But our country's being destroyed by this immigration. We're losing the heritage that we inherited from Europe, and I don't mean that in a bigoted way either, but you know what? There's a reason why European countries are far more advanced than the rest of the world, and we're headed for a banana republic.
I think the thing we want to be clear about, Larry, is that I believe we're both very much for religious freedom. The problem is when your religion insists on taking over and spreading a caliphate through the country and forcing people to adhere to that religion. And now Laura has exposed this explanatory memorandum that was seized by the FBI from the Muslim Brotherhood, which is essentially a plan for taking over the United States. It's a 5-phase plan that's currently on phase 4. And Laura's been very vocal about the fact that multiple pro-Sharia Islamists have now been elected to Congress. That's pretty
well, the Muslim Brotherhood is the granddaddy of all terrorist organizations. That's Al-Qaeda and ISIS are a subset of the Muslim Brotherhood. And you have groups like CARE, and this gets back to another thing. And see, I'm just talking plainly, and that's why I love you and your show and you know what I do with Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I just tell it like it is. Well, I love the president because he tells it like it is. He doesn't hold back. It's none of this, you know, sugar-coated, you know, Pollyanna stuff. This is what we face, and the reality is that these Muslim groups do want to take over this country. They do. And, you know, they're well on their way in Great Britain. They're well on their way in France. The Italians have stiffened their spine a little bit. But that's their goal. And their culture is not the same as our culture. And, you know, it just doesn't mix. I'm sorry, it doesn't mix. And I'll say it straight up. That's my opinion. Other people can differ.
How can we in Minnesota have a case where Keith Ellison, who is accused of beating up 2 different women, you know, on the one hand we've got Judge Kavanaugh, who we had these wildly unfounded claims, and his life was turned upside down. And then we've got Keith Ellison with two accusers who have filed police reports, including photographic evidence of their injuries, and the guy's been elected attorney general.
You know, this is the whole syndrome that we face today. Okay, I'm not a white supremacist. I believe in equality. I'm a civil rights lawyer in many ways. But if you're a minority in this country today, including, you know, our minority on the left, who I have issues with, the Jewish left, okay? You can join our coalition of the Jewish right. These are the people that are actually supporting this unbridled, unfettered, unregulated immigration from Muslim countries. Is that, you know, if you're a minority, you have more rights than the majority anymore. You can do almost anything short of killing someone and get away with it. And, you know, that's just a reality of our life. You know, Alan Dershowitz, the law professor from Harvard, who's a leftist law professor, wrote a column a while back saying, if you're a white man in this country, if you can believe this, he wrote it, he says, you know, don't even bother presenting a defense if you're accused of sexual harassment. You're guilty. Forget it. And then he added, and his I'll try to put it up on our website at freedomwatchusa.org. He said, you know, if Kavanaugh had been Muslim, they would have never gone after him. No questions asked. This is a leftist law professor that said that.
Yeah.
So,
that was in
you
the
know,
Hill,
it's just,
I think.
Our country's been turned upside down. There's no longer equality. And frankly, you know, if you're white, you're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I mean, there definitely seems to be a quickening right now, Larry, in terms of, you know, we've got the Mueller thing coming together. Today, Ruth Ginsburg went into the hospital. Do we think that there's a sense that, you know, there's elements on the left that are losing their mind, that Trump will have an opportunity to nominate yet another Supreme Court justice?
Well, they are. I was listening to Rush Limbaugh today, and he was saying people were calling into the George Washington University Hospital emergency room from the leftists, offering their ribs to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I was joking with you earlier. I hope they were beef ribs so they'd be kosher. But it's an unbelievable situation, and if she's incapacitated or dies, well, she's 85. You know, that's a serious injury for someone that's 85. My grandmother died of a hip when she broke it. You know, it can be downhill after that. All heck's going to break loose. You know. The majority then turns 6-3, but, you know, in favor of the conservatives. But I got to tell you something, Jason. I'm an equal opportunity critic. Is that I had a lawsuit that I brought for the Gold Star parents of Ty Woods and Sean Smith, Charles Woods and Patricia Smith. Charles is going to be in my radio show tomorrow, and we brought a lawsuit against Hillary Clinton for wrongful death and defamation. This is a lesson in our judiciary. It's a lesson in choosing attorneys general. It's a lesson in everything that goes on in Washington at the political appointee level. And we brought this lawsuit, and the theory of the lawsuit was that Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, which was unsecured, and it was later confirmed it was hacked by terrorist nations and other nations adverse to us, that gave up the coordinates of Ambassador Chris Stevens, which led to the deaths of Ty Woods and Sean Smith, two of the people that worked with him in Benghazi. And the other part of that lawsuit is that Hillary Clinton defamed our clients because when they revealed what she had told them, the lies that she had told them, that this was a walk in the woods by Muslims that night that were mad about a video of Muhammad, when in fact she was telling the president of Egypt that she knew it was Al-Qaeda and others, our clients were called a liar. Charles Wood actually kept a diary when he met Hillary and wrote it down immediately because she came up, you know, and gave her phony condolences to the victims. And she wasn't even Secretary of State then. She couldn't claim immunity. So this case goes in front of the now infamous Amy Berman Jackson, who has the Manafort case, a real political hack judge in Washington, D.C. in the federal court, appointed by Obama. On the eve of Memorial Day, she dismisses the case. Now, even if there were valid grounds to dismiss, which there weren't, because Hillary Clinton had no immunity to have committed a crime, with a private email server. That's well accepted in the law. And she didn't have immunity for defaming our clients. Even if that were the case, even if there was a valid reason to dismiss, why would you do it on the eve of Memorial Day? I'll tell you why. Because Amy Berman Jackson was hoping that Hillary might be elected president at the time, and maybe she'd get a higher post on the D.C. Circuit or the Supreme Court or whatever. And, then I take it up to the D.C. Circuit, the appellate court. Who's sitting on the three-judge panel? Interestingly enough, Judge Patricia Millett, who had donated money to Hillary Clinton for her 2008 presidential campaign, and another ultra-leftist judge named Talliard, both appointed by Obama. The third was Kavanaugh. This is another reason I don't like Kavanaugh. And, they affirmed the dismissal of this case. So then I took it up to the Supreme Court. And I thought the Supreme Court might want to review this in a writ of certiorari, at least on the issue of immunity. I mean, there is a division among the circuits, the appellate circuits, as to whether federal officials can be held immune when they step out of the role of being a federal official, which Hillary did when she used a private email server. Well, just 2 days ago, they declined certiorari. What is a writ? And why is that?
Let me stop you. Let me stop you.
Conservative majority.
Hang on.
Why is that? Because in Washington, D.C., the elite know.
Wait, what is a writ?
We have to protect each other.
Wait.
And, yeah.
What is a writ of certiorari? I know you're very on a roll here, but people get lost.
I apologize. I'm emotional.
I know. Everyone is. I got to tell you something. I'm detecting it. The mood through New York City. People are emailing me frantically right now. People are concerned. This shooting in Thousand Oaks, California, all of these elections being overturned. People are taking videos with their cell phones of ballots going into private trucks. It does feel like sort of all hell is breaking loose.
Yeah, and I'm going to go full circle back to the Attorney General position here.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is why I'm getting into this in part.
Sure.
And again, my column on Newsmax, Klayman's Court, makes reference to what happened at the Supreme Court in the context of Sessions firing and appointing a new Attorney General. But, it's political hackery on the bench. And even Kavanaugh at the D.C. Circuit wouldn't look at this thing. So it goes up to the Supreme Court and a writ of certiorari is to get the Supreme Court to review a case on either constitutional grounds or if there's a split among the circuits, different opinions coming out on a particular aspect of the law. That's generally how you get to the Supreme Court. Now here, we had it both ways. This is a constitutional issue. Are federal officials immune from having to adhere to the constitutional rights of American citizens? Because that's what Hillary violated with her use of the private email server, among many other things. Are they immune from that, or do they have to play by the same rules that the rest of us have to play by? And I thought this was a great case for the Supreme Court. I wasn't naive, because Hillary Clinton's never been held accountable. That's why we have our citizens' grand juries, and we're going to have her indicted. But she's never been held accountable. And there's an unwritten rule in Washington, D.C. that you don't gore the ox of your fellow establishment elite. And so the Supreme Court didn't take up cert, and Kavanaugh's now there. I think he recused himself because he had sat on the lower court decision here. But all you needed was 3 justices to have it taken up for review, and they wouldn't do that. Now let's backtrack, if I may continue to ramble on.
Yeah. Is
that the appointment of an attorney general, the president needs to find somebody who is not so political. This guy, Matthew Whitaker, he's a fairly young guy. He got where he is by sucking up to the establishment in the Republican Party. He apparently wrote an article when he was commenting for CNN, talking about reining Mueller in, that ingratiates himself with the powers to be. I think I have dealt with Matthew Whitaker on the Bundy case, trying to get Sessions to review it. He was Sessions' chief of staff. Nothing, zero, okay? Nothing came out of him. And I've written to him recently about an order of the Ninth Circuit that involves me and involves Klayman, and that needed to be mooted out. No response.
Wow.
Okay, this guy, because he's up and coming, because he's rising in the political establishment machinery, is unlikely to take any strong action against either Mueller or against Hillary Clinton or Bruce Orr or, you know, dealing with Fusion GPS, the Steele dossier, whatever. He's not going to do that. He's a Ken Starr type character who in the end will probably bail out, okay? The president needs somebody who is above that. And I'm proposing Bob Barr, my very good friend, and someone who I worked with to have President Clinton impeached. He was a former U.S. attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. He was congressman from Georgia. He's the one who introduced articles of impeachment. I worked with him to do that. He's the one that prosecuted the case as part of the impeachment managers. He's the one that introduced an impeachment report to Congress that I had prepared at Judicial Watch about all the myriad of Clinton scandals, because, and he took the position that Clinton, the least of which he should have been impeached for, was Monica Lewinsky. But you had Chinagate, Filegate, Travelgate, IRSgate, everything else. I mean, if they had tried to impeach Clinton for that, he would have been gone, and he would have been convicted. But they didn't want to do that. You know, Newt Gingrich didn't want to do that. He was Speaker of the House then. They just wanted to wound Clinton enough that they could have somebody like George W. Bush elected president in 2000. And that was the cynical approach of the Republican Party. But Bob was never that way. And, you know, he helped me on the Bundy case. He provided advice to Klayman. He came out and visited Klayman in prison. He didn't get paid for it. He's a good man. And he's the one I would recommend. Now, I also heard today that Chris Christie's being considered, even though he's a politician, but for the fact that Christie could never be confirmed because of what happened with the bridge in New Jersey and a variety of other things. And, you know, frankly, people just can't stand Christie. He might not be so bad. Even though he's a politician, the guy will go the distance. But Bob would be a whole lot better than he was. But I hope that either one or the two would be nominated. And the list that we currently see on the internet are basically a bunch of recycled politicians. You don't want another Jeff Sessions. You don't want another senator in there. You don't want Trey Gowdy, who's two-faced, you know, who's thinking more about himself than taking strong action. I mean, Trey Gowdy sounds real good, you know, on Fox News, but when push comes to shove, no action, because he's couching where he's going in terms of, you know, likely going with a very big law firm in Washington, D.C., and they got to maintain these relationships with the Justice Department and everybody else in the deep state. So I say Bob Barr number one, Chris Christie number two. And, I've asked the president to appoint me special counsel. I wouldn't have to go through a confirmation process. Yeah. But, you know, Larry Klayman would not be confirmed by the Senate. No, the Democrats would go crazy. They'd all have heart attacks. Richard Blumenthal, Dianne Feinstein, etc. You need to get somebody in there who's independent who can get through. And I believe that Bob Barr can do that. And so I hope people will contact the president, tell them that Larry Klayman sent you. The president knows of me, and, you know, and he respects me. I know he does. I got some feedback recently. And say, we want Bob Barr, because he would be excellent. Bob is very independent. He's not going to be swayed. And he's the one person I could ever count on Capitol Hill to stand there with we conservatives without bailing out in some way.
So, Bob Barr. Larry, what is happening with these lawsuits? People want to know. They're questioning, you know, it just seems like the wheels keep grinding in D.C., and I think we're seeing all this activity right now because Donald Trump is the first president who's actually threatening to do something, and all this activity seems to be designed to prevent that. It's like a lot of action to keep things from moving.
Well, let me tell you about our lawsuits, okay? I'm going to put up on our website, you know, an updated list of what we're doing. But in the last several years, I've scored some major victories. But as I always said, and I used to say this when I ran Judicial Watch as well, of course, Judicial Watch doesn't bring these kinds of cases anymore. The head of Judicial Watch, by the way, incidentally, when I left Judicial Watch, I recommended to Tom Fitton and the other directors to bring in Bob Barr to fill my shoes. But Fitton didn't want to do that because he wanted to seize control of Judicial Watch. He wanted it for himself, in effect. And he got the other directors who were weak to allow that to happen. But I wanted Bob Barr to take over because you need a lawyer to run Judicial Watch. It's essentially a public interest law firm in many ways. But he wouldn't do that. And consequently, when I started Freedom Watch, after I ran for the Senate in Florida and didn't win and I came out, and frankly, I'm better on the outside, so it was for the best. But I began to bring these hard-hitting cases, and I've always said that if you win 1 in 10, that's extremely good, because the judges are so politicized and they're so leftist, most of them on the bench, even to today, that it's very difficult. But in the last few years, people asking that question, what did I do? I joined the NSA twice from illegal mass surveillance, which gave rise to the USA Freedom Act. And I'm still in court fighting the NSA so they can't spy on hundreds of millions of Americans without probable cause that we're committing a crime or communicating with terrorists. I was instrumental at Freedom Watch in representing Sheriff Joe Arpaio killing the 5 million amnesty for illegal aliens through an Obama executive order. We filed the case first. We intervened in Texas, along with 25 attorneys general that copied our complaint. We won that. And the Bundy case obviously was a big victory, even though I participated in many different ways. So, if you win 3 things like that in the last 5 years, you're doing really well. And you just got to keep punching, and you hope that you break through. And I've got some cases now, the social media companies. And that case was assigned to a Trump-appointed judge. The discrimination against conservatives and not allowing us a voice so the left can try to take over this country. It was a printing press that really galvanized colonialists during the lead up to our revolution. And, the same thing's true now. It's very important to communicate. That's why what you do is so important. So, by the grace of God, I think we got a good judge there. I got a good judge for a case I brought in my private capacity for Judge Roy Moore, who was defamed by people that were put up by the Democratic Party to smear him. So it's a case against Sacha Baron Cohen. I'm hopeful that that'll put a real chink in the side of the leftist media, Showtime and CBS, that allowed Sacha Baron Cohen to defame my client, calling him a pedophile, which he's not. He's a really fine man. And, these are the kinds of things that you just keep punching, okay? And we're trying to do it peacefully and legally, but what, the punching now is getting physical from the left. And as I've said on the last show, if they want to start it, the right is going to finish it. And it's going to be in self-defense. And that's where we're headed right now. It's not a threat, it's in self-defense. And our Second Amendment rights are extremely important these days. That's why we have it. That's why the Founding Fathers gave us that right. Now, because we are in a state of war right now.
Exactly.
And look at Tucker Carlson. I mean, he would have been justified in shooting those people coming on to his home, but he wasn't there. And this is the world we live in today.
Now, Larry, it's nice to know that we've got everyone armed with video cameras these days, at least so that these incidents can be documented. Here we've got a video from someone named Joanne Knox, who has caught people in Broward County transporting ballots in private vehicles. Now, this is obviously not the way the election is supposed to go. It seems strange to me that we've got all of these very organized protests going on all around the country today. I mean, people hated Jeff Sessions, and now they're protesting that he was fired.
I'll tell you about Florida. Florida is dear to my heart. Okay, that's my home state. And, I ran for the Senate there. I love Florida. And I went in to vote on Tuesday, and the woman asked me, she says, did you receive a paper ballot? Have you voted through a paper ballot? And I said, no, and I hadn't. And I voted in person. I wanted to vote in person. But you know what? She took my word for it. So if I was not honest and not playing it straight, I could have voted twice. I could have voted by paper ballot and by, scanning ballot by filling it out, at the voting place. Wow. And that's really, Broward is highly corrupt. It's the home of Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Need I say more? It's a Democrat stronghold. They played games during the 2000 election, the Bush-Gore fight over that. And they played games in Palm Beach, and that's why Gore wanted those votes recounted, because he knew that those election supervisors were on his side, and they would try to cook the election in his favor. So I was actually taking a position at Judicial Watch at the time because I wanted all the ballots opened up because the Panhandle's votes were never counted. That's a very conservative area of Florida. It's the one county actually I won when I ran. I was up against the Bush machine, Mel Martinez. And so I wanted the whole state recounted. And, you know, my purpose is to make sure that the real person wins who actually got the most votes.
Well, that seems to be the problem, is that there's just no integrity whatsoever in these elections. You know, of course, James O'Keefe and the people at Project Veritas are doing incredible work. I mean, as you said, the press is intended to be a check and balance against government corruption, not complicit with it. But, I mean, there's been tons of evidence of electioneering, of allowing non-citizens to vote. Who the hell thinks that you should be allowing people who aren't citizens of, forget about the United States, any particular country? I mean, you couldn't walk into France and start voting in a French election, nor should you expect to.
Well, look at, you know, California and New York. It's an absolute disgrace. You know, and this is why I felt so strongly about Florida. I don't want Florida to turn into California. Okay, California, the government is a complete disgrace. So in California, any illegal alien can get a driver's license. And once you get a driver's license, then you can register to vote. And that's what happens. New York is the same way. So when President Trump said, I think I won the popular vote, I think he was right because of the way California and New York conduct themselves. California, the biggest state, New York, the fourth biggest state, and it's calculated to allow illegal aliens to vote who want a free ride, who don't want to have to, you know, go through the immigration process, and obviously they vote Democrat, you know, and now in Florida there was an initiative that was passed as part of the Constitution that now felons can vote as long as it's not a violent crime. And that's a big mistake. That was pushed through by the progressives, because who are they going to vote for? The Democrats have always been weak on crime. So that helps the Democrats, too. It's Terry McAuliffe in Virginia that caused that legislation to occur years ago, and that's why Virginia will never see another Republican governor or senator. Virginia, a southern state, is now solidly blue. So these are the games that are being played. Of course, the Republicans try to play the games, too, you know, on the other side. But the Democrats are winning this game. And they'll resort to election fraud. I have a whistleblower who's, you know, like Snowden, who has evidence that Obama's NSA, people in the NSA, CIA, and FBI intervened in the 2008 election to have Obama appointed, you know, in terms of the electoral process and the voting machines. And, you know, forget about the Russians. Our own intelligence agencies were apparently cooking the results, trying to cook them, in Florida and other places.
Well, that's exactly right.
This is how corrupt our government is. We have no government anymore. It doesn't represent the people. And that's why, you know, I love President Trump. I'm going to do everything I can to defend him. And I know you feel the same way and others feel the same way, because he's standing up to this, whether it's the fake news media or whether it's, you know, the deep state political hacks in Washington, D.C. I mean, he had to even go against his own party. Paul Ryan is a despicable individual. And that's the reason the Republicans were thrown out, because, you know, the Republican base said, why should I vote Republican? You know, a lot of them, when they don't do anything, they take up space. They're wards of the state. And they're two-faced. Yeah. So, you know, I'm an equal opportunity critic.
Yeah. You know, Larry, what you're saying rings true. I just did an interview earlier today with Bill Binney, who obviously is a very well-known NSA whistleblower. He's been exposing corruption in the NSA, and this episode earlier was titled "Three-Letter Agencies Spying on Americans." I mean, it's rampant, and people feel like, well, I'm not doing any crime, so I don't mind. But what we're really getting a lesson in after this, you know, 2016 election is that it doesn't matter if you've done a crime or not, because they can take any particular thing and make it appear to be evidence of a crime, and then lock you into this lawfare process where you're put in the position of having to defend yourself. People don't realize that just being inserted into a lawsuit, or worse, a criminal case, has a major impact on any person's life. And if you're the average person who doesn't have $100,000 or $1 million sitting around, you could be screwed just by being accused of a crime.
Well, that's right, and that's why these leaks by Mueller, are so dangerous and harmful, because people are being smeared who haven't done anything wrong. And that's the reason why you have grand jury secrecy. But it's not being respected. There are many ways you can be harmed. Look at what, was done to the Bundys.
Yeah.
Look at how they were set up. They were entrapped. They didn't threaten anybody. But evidence was cooked. Evidence was destroyed. There were kill lists for them at the Bureau of Land Management.
Yeah.
You rise up and you challenge the federal government and we will take your head off. And that was the message. It wasn't even so much the Bundys. It was telling the entire country, do not challenge us. Okay, we are supreme. We are your ruler. And you should not lift your head. Okay, and here's another thing, Jason. We said this last time, is that I believe in peaceful ways of doing things. I believe in the way Martin Luther King tried to do it, Mahatma Gandhi, others throughout history. Peaceful civil disobedience at an extreme, and then using the legal system to the extent you can. But the Founding Fathers created the Second Amendment, and they said that we had the right to assemble militias and to bear arms because they knew that someday the federal government would become so oppressive that the people would have to rise up again. And Jefferson said that. He predicted revolution every other generation. He said, you know what, we're going to have to spill blood again. And we're at that point right now. I don't advocate that. But I'm telling people to defend themselves. Use legally and peacefully your Second Amendment rights. Don't take chances. That's why we have that right. And there was nothing wrong for a militia to come to the aid of Klayman Bundy, even though there weren't that many there. The ones that were there, I've met them. I met them in prison. The people that were indicted were good people. And they didn't intend to hurt anybody. But they have the right to be militia. Militia is not a dirty word. It's not. Our Founding Fathers saw that we will need militia to protect ourselves someday from the oppression of the federal government.
And wasn't it also Thomas Jefferson who said that when the people fear the government, that's tyranny, and when the government fears the people, that's liberty? Obviously, if someone like Robert Mueller, I was texting with Dr. Corsi the other day, and he's, of course, not able to speak about this Mueller subpoena and the questioning that he's under, but the very fact that he's being questioned has essentially suppressed his freedom of speech. He hasn't been broadcasting. It seems very coincidental to me that certain individuals like Jerome Corsi, like Laura Loomer, were targeted through a variety of means to silence them in the critical moments before this midterm election. It's like, Larry, they couldn't, just appoint their people into these positions, so they did basically everything else that they could. It's like a million little pinpricks to try to, cheat with the ballots. You
can do that by piling on attorney's fees and costs and throw someone into bankruptcy. I mean, look at Alex Jones right now. I don't know what he's got financially, but the guy's on the ropes. He said a few things he shouldn't have said. He apologized for it. But, people have said on the left a lot worse, like Farrakhan, calling Jews termites and bloodsuckers and, whatever. And actually, Farrakhan actually advocated killing people, whites and cops and black cops that aren't towing the line as he sees his black Muslim ideology. So, I mean, I have a very valiant, he's my close friend, he's my brother, Dimitri Penny. You know Dimitri, African-American policeman in Dallas who brought a case against Farrakhan, Black Lives Matter. His brothers were killed. He was assaulted. And for that, he was threatened by Farrakhan's people. Wow. He was called a house N. He was called Uncle Tom. He had to move. Anybody that stands up to these people are threatened. And that's why I say, protect yourselves. Use your Second Amendment God-given rights to self-defense.
Wow.
And it's more important today now than ever. And don't start it. Don't hurt anybody. If someone comes after you, protect yourself. And I mean, the irony is with Tucker Carlson, they came on his house. They tried to knock down his door.
Wow, that's crazy.
He would have been justified and actually shooting somebody at that point. But he wasn't there. But apparently his family was there with his kids and his wife.
That's even more upsetting.
Yeah, these people were violent. They were Antifa. You know, I have a case against Antifa in Oakland, California, for a young gay woman who was assaulted by them during that speech that Milo was supposed to give at Breitbart that day. She's the sweetest, nicest person.
Yes.
And they assaulted her, and the Berkeley police stood around watching it happen. The judge, this is another example of our political appointees, appointed by Clinton, was an alumnus, or is an alumnus, of Berkeley. She taught law school there for 8 years. So she dismisses out Berkeley. The case is continuing against Antifa, but she's protecting her own. And this is what the Supreme Court does. It's what everybody does. It's why the American people are fed up. It's why I do what I do. It's why I get up every morning. I'm an optimist. I say, what can I do to try to change things? And I hope people will go to Freedom Watch USA, join our Justice League. You are the superheroes. You know what? Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, and company. They exercised their God-given rights to mete out justice. They didn't look for the corrupt police commissioner of Gotham City or elsewhere to do it, but they did it legally. They did it under our Constitution. And we, the American people today, join our citizens' grand juries. We have the right to have them. Even Justice Scalia said that, in effect, in a decision, United States versus Williams in 1992, where he said that the grand jury doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to the American people. We have to be like the superheroes. And we have to do it for ourselves right now, because we do not have a government. We have President Trump, who's surrounded by a sea of traitors, by a sea of people that want to destroy him. And we must do everything we can to make sure that he continues in office and succeeds, because if he fails, and if he's thrown out, God help us all.
Absolutely. I think that what you said earlier is really important, Larry, that we're going to, this is going to become another one of these total obstructionist kind of periods where they're just so focused on stopping Trump that that's all the government's going to be doing. That's a real danger, and it's a shame that the people seem, the people in the government, the Adam Schiffs and everybody like this, they're more focused on achieving their political goals than actually benefiting the people of the United States. There is no sense whatsoever that any of the Democrats are working to try to make any progress with President Trump. Even in the press conference where Jim Acosta, who I gotta say, this guy, how does he still have a job? I agree with what President Trump said. He's a terrible person.
Absolutely. He should be banned permanently. Just tell CNN, let him cover something else, okay? You like him, keep him, let him go cover, another thing. Make him ambassador to Iran or something. I don't know, put him in he was a foreign correspondent at one time. And, bring another person in. And then, of course, the White House Correspondents Association, which is ultra-leftist, okay, criticizes the president. Forget about the White House Correspondents Association. It's a bunch of hacks over there. And, we saw what happened in the last Correspondents Association event. The president was right not to go. And don't worry about it. Set an example here. Jim Acosta is not a journalist. He's a hatchet man for Jeff Zucker over at CNN.
Right. And of course, the New York Post was reporting that Jim Acosta violated one of the oldest rules of journalism. He wasn't really asking questions. He was sort of grandstanding and accusing the president of things. I've noticed that there's got to be some kind of training class at CNN that does that, where you just get your time with the president and say whatever the hell it is that you're going to say to get that out on the news, even though...
Another good question, and it also goes back to judges again. And others, is that in the old days, so to speak, you had journalists that went to school, they went to college, they learned journalism, they learned ethics, they learned how to do this, okay? Now you just pluck these people from different walks of life. That's why you hear them saying, like. They don't even know how to speak, most of them, because they haven't been trained. And the same thing's true of judges. We pluck these judges, people out of private practice or the government or in-house labor union counsel or corporate counsel. They don't know how to be judges. They never have learned how to do it. It's like Nancy Pelosi saying we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
That's crazy.
These people become judges, and then they start taking courses on how to be judges. But it's like Dr. Strangelove. If you're a defense lawyer, you know, Sig Heil to the defense. If you're a prosecutor, Sig Heil to the prosecution. They don't have the proper temperament. So, you know, I actually have a 5-part suggestion on how we can get better judges, at least at the federal level.
I'm interested in that.
You know, we don't need to get into this show. We can do it some other time.
Yeah.
But you know, we've got a Cadillac of a legal system with drunken drivers at the wheel. So this is what we're up against in this country, and it's all collapsing in on us right now. And the president, another reason I love the guy, is he has the courage to call these judges out. You wouldn't have heard George W. Bush do that. You wouldn't have heard Obama do that. You wouldn't have heard anybody do that, because they're part of the establishment. They count on these judges to protect them if they get in trouble.
Yeah. Now, Larry, we've been hearing that Don Jr. is expecting to be indicted. What would they indict him for? This meeting with the lawyer Veselnitskaya? Like, he's just indicting everybody.
Well, I don't think they'll indict Don Jr. First of all, the president would pardon his son, you know, within milliseconds. But you know, they're just intimidating, and they're smearing. And you know, if they indict him, they'll get him on a false statement or something to that effect. But look, there's this hack judge in Washington, D.C., one of many in the federal court. There's just very few there that have any integrity. And, you know, he just made a ruling that the president was violating the emoluments clause because the president's family is running the Trump International Hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. The emoluments clause was intended if someone is actually working for a foreign government. The president's not working for a foreign government. The fact that foreigners may stay at his hotel doesn't mean that he's violating the emoluments clause. And now they're going to let discovery, you know, go forward in that. And that'll be ground for impeachment, by the way, when the articles of impeachment are filed. Guaranteed that'll be part. Because now there's a judicial decision by this hack leftist Obama-appointed judge. Excuse me, Clinton-appointed judge. Not much difference. That, you know, the president violated the Constitution.
But
there you go, right there.
Isn't any president, I mean, you take Obama, right? Nobody knew who Barack Obama was before he was elected president, and now he's got a $65 million book deal. So isn't it sort of an inherent aspect of being president of the United States that you're going to personally benefit from that? It's a complicated issue. Look at
Lyndon Johnson, maybe arguably tied with Obama for the worst president in my lifetime, killing 55 million people for no reason in Vietnam, just for starters.
Johnson's tough to beat. He's pretty bad.
Possibly being behind the death of John F. Kennedy, possibly.
Yes, I think so.
You know, in some way. Here's a guy who came in as a school teacher to Congress and left a multimillionaire. How did that happen? After, you know, he left the presidency.
Deals with Kellogg, Brown and Root and all kinds of stuff.
Right. He didn't have any private employment in the interim. Where did the money come from?
Did you know that the land that the Johnson Space Center was constructed on was worthless, like arid land in Texas that was owned by Lady Bird Johnson?
Yeah. I mean, the guy was corrupt. He's on tape. You know, you talk about White House taping system that they got Nixon on. They had the same thing for Johnson. It started in Truman, taping conversations. And you have actual tapes where Johnson's soliciting bribes, you know, but no one ever did anything about it, you know, and they still don't do anything about it. They got Nixon because they hated him.
Well, that's what's happening to Trump right now. Everybody there hates him, and they're just doing whatever they can do, looking the other way when crimes like election fraud are being done in their favor. But, you know, anything that Trump does, they want to indict him for. It's really more important than ever right now that people watching go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate. Larry and his staff need our financial support to carry on this work. Every time we talk, I'm just amazed at how much corruption there is in Washington, D.C., how much wrongdoing there is, and every guest that I have on, whether it's Bill Binney or Kevin Shipp, they're talking to us about how the legal system is being used against them. I've even started an entire show, Larry, with Brian Vukadinovich on Monday nights at 6 p.m. We're doing a counter lawfare report where Brian joining me, and we're examining these various cases where, whether it's a civil case or a criminal case, the legal system is being used as a weapon. And it's really damaging, and it's wasting the resource that we otherwise need to carry out justice.
Yeah, and you know, also the people that oversee lawyers, the bar associations, the disciplinary council, they're being used as a weapon too. Let me give you an example. I have a friend, Ty Clavenger, who's a Justice Department lawyer. He files ethics complaints sometimes. He's a fearless guy. And he files a complaint against David Kendall over at Williams and Conley, who helped Hillary Clinton destroy the server that she was doing, the private server, that helped destroy cell phones and other things. DC Bar doesn't do it because the disciplinary council and the deputy disciplinary council all donate to Obama, Clinton, and all the other Democrats. It's unbelievable. Okay, but if you're a conservative, if you're on the other side of the street, those are the people that get burned. Okay, so every aspect of society is working against conservatives, people of faith, and others, because this country, because these leftists are ruthless. They have no concept of the rule of law. They have no concept of ethics. Some do. There's some good people, like Judge Gould in the Ninth Circuit, you know, made some good rulings in the Bundy case. You know, Alan Dershowitz has come around, others. But the overwhelming majority of people on the left have no integrity, none. And this is what we're up against.
Wow. Well, we're getting close to the end of our hour here, Larry. I want to remind people that earlier in the week we were on with Michael Moore of True Pundit, and you had released a new trove of documents from the FOIA lawsuit that you've been prosecuting against Robert Mueller's special counsel. We've been having people look through those, but I haven't personally had some time to get into that. Have you found anything in those documents yet?
Well, I'm going through them now, Jason. I'm sure we're going to find things, and I've got to go back to court. One of my colleagues got married, really good guy, and he's on his honeymoon. And, you know, once he comes back Monday, we're going to be going full steam on this, and it's, you know, it's none too late. And we're going to use this for our citizens' grand juries, and let people understand what we're doing. I put it off a little bit because we were regrouping and I was preoccupied by some cases, but we're cranking it up in Orange County, California. It's a conservative district. And we're going to be indicting Mueller. We're going to be indicting Hillary Clinton. We're going to be indicting Obama. We're going to be indicting George Soros. We're going to be indicting Eric Holder. We're going to be indicting Loretta Lynch. Okay, and we're going to try them fairly. We're going to choose voters, jurors from neutral voter rolls. And we're not going to cook it. Okay, because we've got such strong evidence. I want you to be part of it. I want you to be there because you're a brilliant guy, Jason.
Thank you,
and
Larry.
you know you can figure things out, and you're detail oriented. And so please join our Justice League. And this is expensive. We're going to do it around the country, and we need the support of the American people. And you know, we're on our last legs right now. I'm not just saying that to scare people. I feel it in my heart.
And to be clear, you're not talking about freedomwatchusa.org. You're talking about the United States of America is on our last legs.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Right, people need to go to freedomwatchusa.org. They need to donate.
We're
they need
hanging by a thread. Also, I ask people to go there and listen to my radio show each Sunday. It's also on podcast. You can pick it up. Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, because you'll hear things you won't hear on Fox News and a lot of other places, because I tell it like it is, as I did at the beginning of this show. I mean, you can't say what I said on Fox News and go on. You can't.
Right.
And you can't say that, you know, white people deserve equal rights, because if you do that, you're out.
Right. So people can go to radioamerica.com, and they can also get that Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman podcast from iTunes or wherever you get podcasts from. People can also check out Larry's blog on Newsmax. That's called Klayman's, what's the name? Klayman's Court is what that's called. And I'm glad you brought that up, Larry. I didn't know about that. So that's a good place to go. I've become very interested in learning about the law, and it's something that we all really should know something about, because we have to abide by it and live by it. And when someone turns it on its head, you could become a victim of this really dangerous lawfare. You know, Ben Wittes, the editor of the Lawfare blog, was supposed to speak at Yale Law School today. I had planned to go there and ask him some difficult questions about why he, Shane Harris, and Matthew Tate have been working together to spread information about the death of Peter Smith that is totally incongruent with the facts of that man's death and the things that he did in the last days of his life. But oddly, Ben Wittes, at about midnight last night, canceled that speech, so I didn't have the opportunity to speak to him.
Well, I don't know about Ben Wittes. I've heard of him. But you see, there are very few people in this country that have the courage to go the distance. They don't. Because they'll be ostracized, they'll be vilified, they won't rise through the so-called system, the establishment system. They'll only go so far. And that's the difference between people like me and you. And our founding fathers didn't go along to get along, or get along to go along, however which way it goes. They risked everything to found a new nation. They called it like it is. And we're at that point, and I feel that way. I felt that way for a long time, but I feel that way even more today. And we have to take some risks. And I always say peacefully and legally, but we've got to stick our neck out right now. And people don't know it, but there is more than a storm cloud brewing on the horizon when it comes to the Trump presidency. It's cancerous. And again, as lawyers worked them into that position by doing nothing and just pontificating for a year and a half, and the president is now being taken literally in a cart to the guillotine, and he doesn't even know it yet.
Well, hopefully there's still time to turn it around. I do want to encourage people to visit freedomwatchusa.org to join the citizens' grand juries, to sign the petition to have Larry appointed as a new special counsel to eliminate Robert Mueller and point out the illegality of this investigation. Robert Mueller has gone far afield of his mandate as the special counsel, and no one's saying anything about that. He's just investigating ad nauseum. So please help. I
know we're out of time here, but one last point.
Sure.
There was a hearing in court today in Washington, D.C. by Andrew Miller, one of the people that know Roger Stone. Andrew, I don't know him, apparently had some guts and allowed himself to go into contempt. He has a lawyer, and that's the way you get it up to the appellate court level. And he went into contempt because he challenged the constitutionality of Robert Mueller and the extent of his investigation going beyond his mandate. And it's now in front of the D.C. Circuit. Now, why didn't the president do that? Why didn't he use those legal means? Why didn't his lawyers do that? And, you know, it's incomprehensible. Instead, his former White House counsel winds up giving 30 hours of interviews to Mueller. God knows what the guy said. It's why he's no longer there. I'm sure the president got rid of him, too, for similar reasons, ultimately, when he figured out what was going on. But why haven't his lawyers had the guts of Andrew Miller to challenge this?
Well, it's good to know that there are still some people with integrity in Washington, D.C., and they're fighting for the last little bit of freedom that remains. As you said, Larry, we're hanging on by a thread. My guest, of course, everybody knows, is Larry Klayman. Larry, I always enjoy having you on the show and hearing your insights. I learned so much, and I think everyone was really looking to you to do these things and point out these wrongdoings and shortcomings, and hopefully these citizen grand juries will be a huge success. I look forward to having you back on the show soon, and I definitely want to encourage people to go to Twitter. You can go to the CS The Truth, at CS The Truth on Twitter. That's where I've posted the link to the FOIA documents that Larry and his team have retrieved in their lawsuit against Robert Mueller. You can watch that video where Larry and myself and Michael Moore of True Pundit were reviewing the documents. The links where you can download them yourself and peruse the documents are in the video description on YouTube and elsewhere. So please check that out and help Larry and his team at freedomwatchusa.org USA.org to overcome this incredible wrongdoing before it's too late. Larry, thanks for joining me tonight. Have a great evening.
Jason, and I urge people to support you and your organizations because we need people like Jason Goodman.
Thank you very much, Larry. I'll see you soon. Have a great night, and thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.